This is Renata. This is part 3 of going through the hscti.net manual. I'm setting this up because I was asked to in the Life Manifestation School community, and so I'm just putting it on YouTube for the convenience of having it on YouTube. So basically, I'm just screencasting my dad's videos off of hscti.net/manual. We're going to be doing the use of structural links for chi energy transfer and methods to make abstractions permanent.
Before I'm continuing now with the success strategies, again, I'm talking about structural links and their importance in energy transfer to any target, a person, a moving object or a location, and to use them to connect with a specific desired effect or trend. With those introductory experiments, you have gained now the evidence that life energy transfers at any distance. In fact, you have gained this by hopefully performing the previous exercises of which I have talked. And for this transfer, an adequate structural link and sufficient life energy, of course, are important factors. And in the following, I'm describing that which you in part know already more precisely, and is several types of structural links. You know by now of structural links that are identical. I call them near identical because there are no two things in the universe which really are identical. For instance, the hair or skin rubbings, fingernails that contain the genetic code, or photos of a person or of a location. And I also touched upon the method of mentally creating structural links, of establishing such links with your capability to abstract and to make those abstractions more permanent than they are in your brain. And one of the things to do in order to get acquainted with your device and use it for real powerful operations is to build up a very good connection with it, again a structural link to your device. The reason being that the more comfortable you feel with your device, the more powerful the results will be. Structural link in operation. Now I'm giving you several types of structural links which you can use in your work. First, I mentioned identical structural links, which is the example often used in traditional operations. Hair, fingernails, skin rubbings, whatever. And to this belong also clothing or signatures. Typically there it is a genetic code that counts. It's skin rubbings that you find there. Saliva and blood has been used for millennia already. Identical structural links are mostly used when a connection with a target is established. A photo is not exactly identical, but it's a very good map, which, as you will learn later and will experience, it needs a connection based on your capability to abstract, to make this map active. Generally, it works by itself. Since you assume it is, that's also a capability to abstract. You assume it connects directly. Besides identical structural links, you can use many different types of equivalent structural links. Previously, I've mentioned the mental connections that you define by your capability to abstract. And you can establish that a connection with concentration upon the target and upon the envisioned trend or the desired effect. And you solidify those abstractions. Here we have nothing tangible per se originally. We have to do with abstractions or with maps that our brain creates. Such things have a symbolic value, and you make the connection with your abstraction in your mind. And be aware of it. A map itself is meaningless unless you connect it with something. You know where it belongs to. It's basically the interaction with the thinking of a living being who is capable of reading the map and using it. Going back to some of the more traditional operations, while the genetic code of the target, of course, is pretty clear, it establishes a link almost immediately. Similar, if you break some hard objects, the breaking surfaces are perfectly identical. And the genetic code is unique to every person. And of course, traditional operators are very, very familiar with many ways of setting up such links. But there's also the second type of link has been used for a long, long time. And in this case, the practitioner has to know what this structural connection actually means that he establishes. A mental focus on the envisioned actions relating to the map while determining that this objective is a representative or a symbol is sufficient in most cases. Photo, as I said, excellent structural connection is a map, but it's non-consciously, the person knows already it reflects what it represents. Still, the practitioner has to know that the photo connects with the person it represents and not with another identical photo. The photo then is used to solidify an abstraction, to make the abstraction permanent and of connecting life energy at a distance from the generator where the photo is to that person or to the object that's photographed. As far as mental images and thousands of users are concerned, think of the power of prayer in any one of the existing religions. Here too is a mental image created, an abstraction, and people know what it's supposed to bring. Experimentally, and I have used double-blind methods, I've proven two important things about equivalent structural links. Number one, if you focus on a place, for instance, in the experiment before, in your apartment, where you want to send life energy, and you make a scribble at the same time knowing that the scribble represents a target, this scribble becomes a valid target link. You can, of course, also write a numeric values, or you can set radionic knobs. That's a more recent method that has been used. Devices where you turn knobs to specific numbers. And the same holds true when you arbitrarily set the numbers of your manifestation device. I'm right back to the radionics device, or manifestation program. Some of them have numbers. By focusing on a target or knowing that, or trend, and knowing that what you're doing now represents this target or trend. Or simply you can write down arbitrary numbers, knowing they represent what you're thinking about. The manifestation device or the program is actually a perfect map. It's a very abstract one at that. And the simultaneity of your focus and setting the parameters makes the arbitrary settings perfect settings and very good structural links. Here then, we have the basic common functioning principle of any set of equivalent structural link. And this, in fact, includes the famous similar similibus. Similar things are treated with similar things in Latin. And here too, the similar thing is very often more a map of what you want to do. For instance, the herb that looks like a lung is used to cure lung disease or has been used. Even so, nowadays we know that there is no medicine in it that would do it. But this was the basis of some ancient methods of sympathetic medicine. Whether it worked or not, I leave it up to you to decide. The common functioning principle, so, of equivalent structural links is that such links are established by the mind, which means the power of abstraction of an operator, you, when the operator focuses on a target or an action while establishing its map or its symbol for the purpose of action at a distance. Very easy. And there is something that there are several people who work with the same symbol for the same purpose. The more life energy is attached to it, and the more reliable can be such a structural connection. This principle has led to some controversial practices in the past. I mentioned before the lung herb, structural linkage between certain objects and specific effects that were established more by the mind. I like the term a collective placebo effect. Don't underestimate that. It does work. And I suspect even that in the case of astrology, millions of people, there are several different systems that equally work, that millions of people become connected, again an objective placebo effect, to establishing such a structural map. In other words, it likely is not entirely the power of the planets per se that is at the root of astrology being a tool to make statements about people's lives and to predict their future trends. It is in fact the power of the meanings attached to these planets and their interrelations, positions in so-called signs and mutual aspects as observed from the Earth throughout the history of this science. It's a type of a very powerful and effective collective placebo effect. The fact that there are several schools of astrological interpretation using quite different methods that are often at odds with each other and which seem to bring results to their believers in particular and individuals in the culture where such ideas originated in general is actually a support of this opinion. And a final note, you can design, that is the result of double-blind experiments, you can design your own symbols which help you establish structural connections. And it is important that such symbols are unique when doing your own. Of course, you can use symbols that have been used by large groups of the population, and you can make them unique by specifying what the symbol does precisely for you. Just writing something down is fine, or make an additional symbol representing your own specifics. You become more precise with it. Let's point out that throughout history, a huge number of such quote esoteric unquote maps or structural link groups of any type and descriptions have been generated and, of course, proven to be useful. Such links have been mainly established for trends or for desired actions. Call them spirits, call them planetary genii, call it planetary energies, saints, deities, whatever the belief structure is in which it was generated. And in principle, those trend energies are simply perceived in an animistic way as a living entity. And this perception is a result of such an energy having its own mind sometimes, some cybernetics that allows it to many potential paths to achieve a specific goal. And this is a very valid objective reality. You will find that out as you are working with the equipment, that sometimes you just let it flow by itself without getting too specific, and you may have a quicker result. In fact, this attitude adds a very useful flexibility, either expected or even on a non-conscious level, but always arranged somewhere by the mind of the operator when it comes to achieving success with the help of such, quote, spirits, unquote, or whatever you call those energies. On the other hand, such thinking has proven to be a little trap to some people because if it works too well, people think it's the only truth available, and they try to repress everything else, all other practices, including science. In my opinion, it should be completely up to the reader or operator, to you, to analyze the traditions of which you know and use them to your advantage. After all, it is my opinion that there are more objective realities out there than living beings in the universe. And that's quite a few.
Take this down. The next one. The next one is methods to make abstraction permanent. After we get through this one, then that'll be the end of this video.
Now about the stick pad and dials on some of the manifestation devices. I have mentioned previously that the dials of the manifestation device have the function of being universal structural links. And if you combine this dial with near identical or symbolic representation of the target and or trend links, you can achieve very precise equivalent structural links. This precision improves for you the connection between trend and target significantly. And a little bit going into the past, when this specific connection between numeric dials and trends or targets became known, it was discovered some 100 years in the past, people spoke about frequencies because frequencies were determined by settings of resistors back then, and it represented pretty much the stand of modern science back then. Another word that was coined very soon was radionics, because people became aware of radiating energy, radiating frequencies, and the same radiating energy was assumed in this connection. This certainly was an intelligent guess for the time being, and this terminology remained for over 100 years, and as I have pointed out earlier, I see nothing wrong in using it. In fact, I'm going to use these words as well. We have to be aware that it doesn't quite represent what the word means. So I see nothing wrong in using it also in the light of my new discoveries, just the same way as the word element has been used to describe chemical elements, even though this word, I mean elements, meant something entirely different throughout the centuries that preceded the discovery of chemical elements per se. We talk about the 4 elements, and in some cultures of 5 elements: air, water, fire, and earth. As an example, now how you can establish a structural link with numeric settings, I show a device that is a manifestation device with those dials. It's a red 2000. Here you have the frequency, you turn it on, you set it at the level that you wish. And here you have the 3 dials that represent a structural link that you can set with a numeric setting. And here you have the stick pad, which has been used a lot in the past. I mentioned before, it's not really not needed anymore. And you find that out through our customer support as well. But I use a stick pad right now to establish numeric settings, because a lot of people are used to it still. So you have put something there, such as a business card, and I want to make a specific effect upon that business. And I could write that down here with a pen, write down specific effect. And then to solidify that abstraction more, I think about it, and while moving one finger on this so-called stick pad, I'm turning the dials here, and whenever the rubbing feels differently, it's also called rubbing plate, almost as if the finger sticks to it. Of course, it doesn't glue to it, but it's the different rubbings. Then I stop. And then for fine-tuning, I can go a little bit forth and back with the same dial till it stops, till again the feeling comes. Same with the other dials, going, and it's rubbing a little bit, stop. Same on the third dial. And this way, I have established a more precise, more permanent structural link. Compare such a structural link, which is less precise, not using those numbers, with the light cone of a flashlight. The cone gets larger the more distance you are from the objects that you want to see. And of course there comes less light. Of course, then some flashlights you can set the cone that you see further, and that's similar to here. And while the precise structural link, the distance is irrelevant, you know that already, and you can establish this either with a stick pad and dials or totally arbitrarily. I mentioned that before. I did double-blind experiments to prove this, and compare it to a laser beam that hits a target, even hundreds of yards away, and it's still the image pretty stark. And of course, you can see it maybe with goggles. Got it?
Okay, that's the end of that video. So I'm gonna wrap this one up, and then I'll do more videos of the success strategies and the pitfalls. These videos here. Thank you for watching.